Okay, so imagine this. I think if you're listening, you've probably lived some version of it. You're at a crossroads in your life,
A big one.
a huge one, and you make the decision, the one that looks good on paper.
Yeah.
You pick the stable job over the passion project that might not pay the bills.
Or the kind, predictable partner over the one who felt, I don't know, a bit like lightning in a bottle.
Exactly. You choose duty,
Yeah.
maturity, responsibility, and you brace yourself for this feeling of quiet adult satisfaction.
Right.
But instead of that, what you get is this hollow, ringing silence in your chest. It's not the sharp pain of failure. It's this deep, quiet devastation. It's the ache that comes after a victory that feels somehow like a profound loss.
And that aches, that's what we're going to get into today. It's so important to understand that the feeling, the sense that you've betrayed yourself, it isn't a flaw. It's not you being confused.
It's a signal.
It's the starting point. It's the moment you finally stop and ask, why does doing the right thing feel so deeply wrong? That's you signaling you're ready to listen to an inner self you've been muting for a long time.
It feels like the first crack in the facade,
Yeah.
That moment you realize, okay, the life I've built looks great from the outside, but something inside me just doesn't believe the story I'm telling anymore.
And our mission today is really to get into the architecture of that feeling, to see how choices we make for what feels like survival can become these silent sacrifices of who we are.
So where do we start? What's the first piece of that architecture?
We have to start with a foundational truth, which is that the mind isn't, a single harmonious thing. It's not a choir singing in unison.
No, it's a debate.
It's a theater of competing forces, constantly.
And one of the main forces, the one that so often gets sacrificed for the right choice, is desire. And we don't just mean like wanting a new car.
No, not at all.
We mean that raw, pulsating, often really inconvenient drive that pushes you toward what feels true, even if it threatens the entire comfortable order you've built. It's almost primal.
It is primal, and the right choice is often just the outcome of an internal war. But it's a war that isn't won through wisdom or some kind of, peaceful integration.
It's won through repression.
Exactly. Through repression. The ego, the part of you that has to deal with reality, it gets put under intense pressure from the superego.
Okay, let's ground that term, superego. In day-to-day life, what is that? Who is that voice?
It's the internalized voice of authority. It's a composite of your parents, your teachers, society, all those shoulds and musts you absorbed growing up.
So it's the voice that says a good person should pick stability.
A mature adult must not chase a feeling. It's the part of you that exiles certain wishes, that declares some of your deepest longings to be unbecoming, unacceptable.
So we aren't really making a choice. We're performing an act of obedience. We put on this mask of virtue. We smile while we bury the very thing that makes us feel alive.
And that's the stunning part. The right choice is fundamentally a surrender that's been dressed up in the language of maturity. You get praised for it, but underneath all that praise, you've performed a sacrifice of self. You've become a sort of monument to what you didn't allow yourself to want.
That reframes everything. The emptiness isn't because the job is a bit boring, it's because the real you isn't even there. But the unconscious, it doesn't just forget that sacrifice, does it?
It absolutely does not forget. The unconscious is a timeless living archive. And when it can't speak openly, it speaks in code.
Which is why the feelings feel so irrational. You think, why am I so irritable? My life is perfect.
But the feeling is perfectly logical. It's a direct expression of what was silenced.
And the first way it often speaks is through fantasy, right? That little flicker of an image at the edge of your mind just before you sign the papers for the sensible thing.
Yes. That image of turning around, of choosing the other path.
The door you didn't walk through.
That flicker is what we'd call the nursery of the neuroses. It's the mind showing you the truth you're about to deny. It's desire disguising itself so it can survive, even if it's just in a daydream. The unconscious is staging a truth that you're not yet strong enough to face head on.
And then, once the choice is made, the protest begins. It's not a quiet protest either, it's a revolt. So what are some of the ways this banished desire tries to get air?
Well, a very common one is a sudden, sharp burst of irritability. But it's usually aimed at someone who did follow their desire.
Ah, so you find yourself judging a friend who took a big risk.
You resent their selfishness or their drama because it's safer to hate their freedom than to mourn the loss of your own.
Or it comes out physically. The insomnia that shows up just when everything is supposed to be calm and settled.
Because the mind is not at rest. The internal war is still raging. The superego is holding the line, and desire is banging on the walls, Rest is impossible when the self is at war with itself.
And the dreams. The dreams are so powerful. I think a lot of people have had this one.
Yeah.
You're on a train platform, watching the train you needed to be on just pull away.
And your feet are stuck to the ground.
Yes. You can't move, you can't yell.
The structure of that dream is everything. The details change. A boat, a carriage. But the script is always, I was supposed to go, but I stayed. The dream isn't just about staying, it's screaming about the paralysis. It's showing you the war between I want and I must not.
So really, the path to understanding this whole thing isn't asking, was this the right choice?
No, the real question, the one that changes everything is, who was silenced when I made it?
That one question acknowledges that there's a missing part of you.
And it connects you to something deeper. Because this choice you just made, it's often not a new choice at all. It's a repetition of a very old bargain you made when you were a child.
You mean the rules we learn to survive, like to be loved, I have to be quiet, or to be safe, I have to be agreeable. Those childhood survival tactics, they become our adult morality.
Precisely. The unconscious doesn't know what time it is. A wound from when you were 7 feels just as fresh today. So what we call responsibility as adults can sometimes just be the ghost of that little kid's strategy to not get abandoned.
We abandon a part of ourselves first, to avoid being abandoned by others.
It's a preemptive strike. And this leads us right to the idea of psychic energy. Let's call it libido. It's the energy of life, of longing, of investment. When you suppress a huge desire, that energy, it has to go somewhere. It doesn't just disappear.
So if all my energy, my libido, wanted me to be an artist, but I repressed it to become an accountant, where does that energy go?
It gets displaced. It's diverted into channels that are considered acceptable. This is why you see so many people in these admired lives who are also relentless perfectionists.
Or excessive caretakers. Or workaholics.
Exactly. They are driven, but not by passion. They're driven by displacement. The energy that belonged to the artist is now being poured into creating the most flawless spreadsheet possible.
Which explains why that right life can feel so hollow. You're succeeding, but you're not really there.
Yeah.
You're living a life that's admired, but it's not truly inhabited.
And to protect that fragile, empty setup, the mind has to use some very strong defenses. And maybe the most powerful one is projection.
Okay, so projection. Let's break that down with an example.
Let's say you find yourself just intensely judging a coworker. Let's call her Sarah. You think she's too dramatic, too attention-seeking. You obsess over it.
We've all been there.
That intense focus is the key. Projection is when the thing we can't stand in ourselves, in this case, maybe a deep, repressed desire to be seen, to be recognized, we locate it and condemn it in Sarah.
So my outrage at her selfishness is really just a measure of how selfish I had to be toward myself by burying my own needs.
It's a perfect mirror. It protects your ego from the unbearable truth that the messy, unacceptable thing you're judging out there in the world, it lives inside of you. By pointing the finger at her, you get to reassure yourself that you are still good, still safe, still in control.
Which brings us back to that constant restlessness, that hollow ache. What is the purpose of it? If the psyche's protesting, what does it want?
That restlessness is what we call resistance. And it's not a flaw to be fixed, it's your psyche's loyalty program. It's making sure you don't completely forget the part of you that you buried. Resistance is loyalty to the truth that was sacrificed.
So if you try to just ignore it or rationalize it away...
It gets louder, because the unconscious sees you trying to bury it all over again.
And this isn't just happening in a vacuum, it's connected to replaying the past. You mentioned repetition, and that brings us to transference.
Transference is that invisible thread. It connects the emotional dynamics of your past to your present. You might, for instance, treat your boss not as they actually are, but as the ghost of a critical parent whose approval you're still fighting for.
Or you keep dating emotionally unavailable people.
Because you're replaying the lesson you learned from a caregiver. Wanting closeness only leads to rejection. You learned long ago that your own desire was dangerous. So now you treat it like an intruder in your own house.
And transference shows you where that original wound is.
This shows you exactly.
So, if this is the architecture, how does it ever change? How do you break out of the replay, out of the emptiness?
It's rarely a slow academic process. It usually comes as an event, a moment of just searing insight. It's a whisper, but it's undeniable. And it says, you didn't choose this, you surrendered to it.
And in that moment,
the whole story shifts. You see the original decision not as your failure, but as an act of fidelity. Right. Fidelity to an old, desperate promise you made out of fear. If I give up what I want, I will be safe.
And the goal isn't to just quit the job and run away tomorrow.
Not necessarily. The goal is to change your relationship to the sacrifice.
Oh.
It's about consciously understanding it and mourning it. When you can do that, when you can acknowledge the cost, it stops being an act of repression and becomes a conscious choice. And a conscious choice, even a painful one, has dignity. It has wholeness.
So the final heartbreaking cost of that right life is this. The price was the part of you that had to stop breathing, to stay small enough to fit inside the story you were given.
And the goal is integration, not eliminating the conflict. It's about letting all the parts of yourself, the wild desire, the critical superego, the navigating ego, letting them all speak to each other with some awareness. You can honor the sacrifice you made to survive, and you can also deeply mourn what was lost.
It's about giving yourself permission to stop running from the parts of you that you were taught to be ashamed of. Permission to be messy and uncertain and finally whole. The unconscious isn't your enemy. It's your ally, trying to guide you back to yourself.
So, as we close out, the question to sit with, maybe long after you're done listening, is this: what have I been forbidden to want?
The task isn't to solve your unconscious like a puzzle. It's just to meet the self that's been waiting for you this whole time. The unconscious isn't a problem to be solved. It's a world to be lived. And by asking that question, you're finally opening the door.